And Elisha answered, God as a noun and verb hath showed me that thou shalt be king over Syria. So he departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, What said Elisha to thee? And he answered, He told me that thou shouldest surely recover. And it came to pass on the morrow that he took a thick cloth and dipped in water and spread it on his face, so that he died, and Hazael reigned in his stead. The conspiracy of Jehu. And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and said unto him, Gird up thy loins, and take this box of oil in thy hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, and go in, and make him arise from among his brethren, and carry him to an inner chamber. Then take a box of oil, pour it on his head, and say, Thus saith God as a noun and verb, I have anointed thee king over Yisrael. Then open the door, and flee, and tarry not. So the young man, even the young man, the prophet, went Ramoth Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting, and he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, Unto which of all us? And he said, To thee, O captain. Then he arose and went to the house, and poured the oil on his head, and said to him, Thus saith God as a noun and verb, God of Yisrael, I have anointed thee king over the people of God as noun and verb, even over Yisrael. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of God as a noun and verb, at the hand of Azbal. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Yisrael. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahiah. And the dog shall eat Azbal in the portion of Yisrael, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door and fled. And Jehu came forth to the servants of his lord. And one said unto him, Is all well? Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, Ye know the man and his communication. And they said, It is false. Tell us now. And he said, Thus and thus spoke he to me, saying, Thus saith God as a noun and verb, I have anointed thee king over Yisrael. Anointed as in made a Messiah. Then they hastened and took every man his garment, and put it under him on the top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, Jehu is king. So Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Yisrael, because of Hazael the king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Yezreel, or Yezreel, I don't know. Sometimes there's a Y before the AL, of the wounds, which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael the king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it be your minds, then let none go forth nor escape out of the city to go tell it in Israel. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Israel, for Joram lay there. And Ahaziah, the king of Yehudah, was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman in the tower of Israel, And he spied on the company of Jehu as he came. And he said, I see a company. And Urim said, take a horseman and send to meet them, and let him say, is at peace. So there went one on horseback to meet him, and said, thus saith the king, is at peace? And Jehu said, what hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, the messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Then he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them and said, thus saith the king, is at peace? And Jehu answered, what hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, he came even unto them, and cometh not again, and the driving is like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. And Urim said, make ready. And his chariot was made ready, and Urim the king of Yisrael, and Ahaziah the king of Yehuda went out, each in his chariot. And they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelim. And it came to pass, when Urim saw Jehu, that he said, is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, what peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Isbal and her witchcrafts are many. And Urim turned his hands and fled, and said unto Ahaziah, there is treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength, and smote Jehoram between his arms, and the arrows went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. Then said Jehu to Bidkar, his captain. Sometimes there's a Q, I'm not sure. K is not always a K, but I mean, in Aramea the letters are clear, but take up and cast him into the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelim. For remember how that when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, God as Naunberb laid this burden upon him. Surely I have seen yesterday that the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, saith God as Naunberb, and I will requite thee in this plot, saith God as Naunberb. Now therefore take and cast him into the plot of ground, according to the word of God as Naunberb. But when Ahaziah the king of Yehuda saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house, and Jehu followed after him and said, smite him also in this chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Ibleam. And he fled to Megiddo and died there. And when Jehu was come to Yisrael, Yezreel, Isbal heard it. And she's painted her face and tired her head and looked out at a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, had Zimri peace? Who slew his master? And he lifted up his face to the window and said, who is on my side, who? And looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. And he said, throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses. And he trod her under foot. And when he was come in, he did eat and drink, and said, go, see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull, and the feet, and the palms of her hands. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, This is the word of God as noun and verb, which he spoke by his servant Eliyahu the Tishbim, saying, In this portion of Yisrael, in this portion of Yazrael, shall dogs eat the flesh of Azbal, and the carcass of Azbal shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Israel, so that they shall not say, This is Azbal. And a contracted form is Yizbal, which is, Azbal. But Jezebel kind of makes it sound like Virgin of the Lord, but that's not quite. Aleph, Lamed, Zaid, but whether you say Bel or Baal, in some cases it really doesn't matter culturally, but it seems there was an Ayin version of that too. But it amounts to the same thing, doesn't it? Virgin, whore of the Lord, which must have been a slur. Yizbal is probably the real name. Now the rest of the acts of Yehu and all that he did and all his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yisrael? And Yehu slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Jehoahaz, his son, reigned in his stead, and the time that Yehu reigned over Yisrael and Samaria was 28 years. The death of Elisha. In the 23 year of Yoash, the son of Ahaziah, the king of Yehuda, Jehoahaz, the son of Yehu, began to reign over Yisrael in Samaria. He reigned 17 years, and Jehoahaz slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria, and Yoash, his son, reigned in his stead. Now Elisha was fallen sick of his sickness, whereof he died. And Yoash, the king of Yisrael, came down unto him, and wept over his face, and said, O my father, the chariot of Yisrael, and the horsemen thereof. And Elisha said unto him, Take bows and arrows. And he took unto him bow and arrows. And he said to the king of Yisrael, Put thine hand upon the bow. And he put his hand upon it, and Elisha put his hands upon the king's hands. And he said, Open the window eastward. And he opened it, and Elisha said, Shoot. And he shot. And he said, The arrow of the Lord's deliverance, and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. For thou shalt smite the Syrians in Aphek, till thou have consumed them. And he said, Take the arrows. And he took them. And he said unto the king of Yisrael, Smite upon the ground. And he smote thrice and stayed. And the man of God was wroth with him. And he said, Thou shouldest have smitten 5 or 6 times, and then hadst thou smitten Syria till thou hast consumed it. Whereas now thou shalt smite Syria but thrice. And Elisha died, and they buried him. And the bands of the Moabite and the Moabim invaded the land at the coming of the year. And it came to pass, as they were burying a man, that, behold, they spied a band of men, and they cast a man into the sepulchre of Elisha. And when the man was let down, touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood upon his feet. The fall of Yisrael. In the 12th year of Ahaz, the king of Yehuda, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Yisrael 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of God as a noun and verb, but not as the kings of Yisrael that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, I think maybe it's a and Shalmaneser, maybe, king of Assyria. And Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. Hushai, is it Hushai? And gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So king of Egypt, and brought no presents to the king of Assyria. And as he had done year by year, therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Yishrael away into Assyria and placed them in Hala and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of Medes. For so it was that the children of Yishrael had sinned against God as noun and verb, their God, which had brought them out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared others that were considered to be gods, and walked in the statutes of those who turned their back on God. Heathen, there's no heathen and pagan religions really, but Guim from Guya is those who turn their back on God, whom God as noun and verb cast out from before the children of Yishrael and of the kings of Yishrael, which they had made. And the children of Yishrael did secretly those things that were not right against their Lord, against God as noun and verb, their God. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city, and they did set up images and groves in every high hill and under every tree. So they're resurrecting the Baal and Ashtoreth, Asherah cults. Remember to high under evergreen tree, and there they bit. Sorry. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did those who turned their back on God, whom God as noun and verb carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke God as noun and verb to anger. For they served idols, whereof God as noun and verb had said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet God as noun and verb testified against Yishrael and against Yehudah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks, like to the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in God as noun and verb, their God. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them, and they followed vanity and became vain, and went after those who turned their backs that were round about them, concerning whom God as noun and verb had charged them, and they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of God as a noun and verb, their God, and made them like molten images, even to calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of God as a noun and verb, to provoke him to anger. Therefore God as a noun and verb was very angry with Yishrael, and removed them out of his sight, and there was none left but the tribe of Yehudah only. Hence why you end up with Judaism. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharwaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Yisrael. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. The reign of Hezekiah. Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hoshea, the son of Elah, king of Yisrael, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, the king of Yehuda, began to reign. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. Remember, 25's like a, when stage 5 starts in life, doesn't it? So there's a psychological, physical change about that time. His mother's name, well, maybe not till 30 or something, but yeah. His mother's name was also Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of God as noun and verb. Zikr is like making mention. So making mention of God was his name. According to all that Dawood his father did, he removed the high places and broke the images and cut down the groves and brooks in pieces. And broke in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made, for unto those days the children of Yisrael did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan, and he trusted in God as noun and verb, God of Yisrael, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Yehuda, nor any that were before him, for he cleaved to God as noun and verb, and departed not from following him. Yehudi can mean God follower, Wadi is in follower, and but kept his commandments, which God as noun and verb commanded Moshe, and God as noun and verb was with him, and he prospered whithersoever he went forth. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria, and served him not, and smote the Philistine, even unto Gaza, and the borders thereof, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Yisrael, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years, they took it, even the 6th year of Hezekiah. That is the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Yisrael. And Samaria was taken, and the king of Assyria did take away Yisrael into Assyria, and put them in Hala and in Habor, by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Now, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, come against all the fenced cities of Yehuda, and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish, saying, I have offended. Return from me that which thou puttest on me will I bear. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, 300 talents of silver and 300 talents of gold. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of God as a noun and verb, and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time And Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of God is noun and verb, and from the pillars which Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria sent Tartan and Rabsaris and Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah with a great host against Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem, and when they were come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is in the highway of the fuller's field, and when they had called to the king, there came out to them Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Yoah the son of Asaph the recorder. And Rabshakeh said unto them, Speak ye now to Hezekiah, Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, What confidence is this, wherein thou trustest? Thou sayest, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for the war. Now, on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? Now behold, thou trustest upon the staff of this bruised reed, even upon Egypt, on which if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, unto all that trust on him. But if ye say unto me, We trust in God as noun and verb, our God, is not that he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah hath taken away, and hath said to Yehuda and Jerusalem, Ye shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? Now, therefore, I pray thee, give pledges to my lord the king of Assyria, and I will deliver thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon them. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Am I now come up without God as a noun and verb against this place to destroy it? And God as a noun and verb said to me, Go up against this land and destroy it. Then said Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, and Yoah, and Rabshakeh, Speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it, and talk not with us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Now there is Assyrian, but Aramea isn't really the Jews' language, but it was later called Hebrew, although at this time it was called Aramea. But Rabshakeh said unto them, Hath my master sent me to thy master, and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men which sit on the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? That's quite the thing to say. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language, and spoke, saying, Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus saith the king, Let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you out of his hand. Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in God as a noun and verb, saying, God as a noun and verb will surely deliver us, and this city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Assyria. Hearken not to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, Make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and then eat ye every man of his own vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink every one of the waters of his cistern until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of oil, olive, and of honey, that ye may live and not die, and hearken not to Hezekiah when he persuadeth you, saying, God is noun and verb will deliver us. Hath any of those to be considered gods of nations delivered at all his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are those considered to be gods of Hamath and of Arpad? Where are those considered to be gods of Sepharwaim, Hannah, and Eva? Have they delivered Samaria out of mine hand? Who are they among all considered to be gods of the countries that have delivered their country out of mine hand, that God is noun and verb should deliver Jerusalem out of mine hand? But the people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, saying, Answer him not. Then came Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, to Hezekiah with their clothes rent, and told him the words of Rabshakeh. And it came to pass, when King Hezekiah heard it, that he rent his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of God as noun and verb, and sent Eliakim, which is over the household, and Shebna the scribes, and the elders of the priest, covered with sackcloth, to Yeshaiah the prophet, the son of Amaz, and they said unto him, Thus saith Hezekiah, This day is a day of trouble and of rebuke and of blasphemy, for the children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring forth. It may be that God is noun and verb. Thy God will hear all the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria, his master, hath sent to reproach the living God, and reprove the words which God is noun and verb. Thy God hath heard. Wherefore lift up thy prayer for the remnant that are left. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Yeshaiah, and Yeshaiah said unto them, Thus shall you say to your master, Thus saith God as a noun and verb, Be not afraid of the words which thou hast heard, for which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and shall return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land.